Can one of you naturalists help me with my logic here? And by naturalist, what I mean by naturalist right now are those of you that believe that the material world is all there is to our reality. In other words, outside of physical materials that have molecular makeup, there's nothing else outside of that in our universe. Help me with this understanding because it seems to me that naturalism vehemently contradicts cosmology. It is the popular opinion in modern science today that all of matter, space, and time came into existence from a particular point at the Big Bang. That's what the majority of modern cosmologists say today. Now, if the empirical evidence that leads them to that conclusion is correct, if it's true that all matter had a beginning, then it naturally follows. I deduce from that whatever caused matter to come into existence cannot be made of matter. It must be immaterial. Now, if that logic does not make sense, show me how. And please, simply show me how that logic doesn't make sense. And if it's dark and you can't see my face, my bad. I really don't have a lot of light going on right now. But regardless, you hear my voice. How does that not make sense? The cause, whatever it is, that brought matter, space, and time into existence, whatever that cause is immaterial. It's an immaterial cause. That doesn't mean that cause was God. It just means it was an immaterial cause. Immaterial causes mean, or immaterial causes come from immaterial realities. If there can be such a thing as an immaterial cause, then there must be an immaterial reality to the universe. There must be, which is how I define the spirit realm. It's the sector of reality that is not made up of materials and molecules. Now, how can we be so certain that there is a reality outside of the material if we can't observe it? Can we observe it? Can we see it? Well, see, first you have to understand this. When it comes to science, science has its limitations. Science can tell us things about the natural world. But if there is such a thing as a spiritual world, it would be outside the jurisdiction of science. Science does not have access to anything that is non physical. And not only that, science cannot tell us everything about our world, period. Science cannot tell us everything. Science cannot tell us anything about metaphysical truths. How do you know that the last time you woke up from your sleep, that was not the beginning of your existence, and you were created, and you were put here with some imaginary or file in your brain that gives you the perception of memory, and that your whole life up to this point was just implanted into your memory and gave you the perception that you've been here. How do you know that has not happened? Can you know that has not happened, but you cannot prove it scientifically. Okay, so science cannot reach metaphysical truths. Mathematical concepts. Science cannot prove mathematics. Science presupposes mathematics. You need math to do science, not science to do math. So science cannot explain mathematical concepts. Historical claims. Science cannot access historical claims, specific historical claims, like what did people say thousands of years ago. You need historical literature, people who wrote testimony, people who experienced the events and wrote down what happened for future generations. And finally, science cannot account for reason and logic. Science presupposes reason and logic. You need reason and logic to do science. Without reason and logic, science is irrelevant. You can't do science without reason and logic. So science cannot explain reason and logic. It can't account for it. So if the spirit, having said all that, if the spirit realm truly does exist, let's just say if it exists, then how would you know it? Well, if you're looking to science, you wouldn't. Why? Because science cannot access that. So it only naturally follows. If you really want to know if the spirit world exists, you can't depend on science. You have to look at something outside of science. Well, how about logic? How about reason? I think those are two perfectly good ways to come to an understanding that yes, the spirit realm does exist. Let's go back to the original question. What's the original question? The original question is there such thing as an immaterial reality? Well, let me ask you this question. What is the molecular makeup of our consciousness, our thoughts, our cognitive faculties that make us human, our ability to think, reason, weigh consequences, judge potential outcomes, predict, induce, deduct, reason, make choices, think, process, analyze, decide, feel, hurt. What is the the molecular makeup of our cognitive faculties, our consciousness, our awareness that we are alive? The very thing that makes us a human being and not robots. What is the molecular makeup of our consciousness? There is no molecular makeup of our consciousness. Now, if you're going to try to say our consciousness is our brain, then what that means is all of our thoughts, all of our decisions, all of our choices are direct results of chemical reactions. They're just we are just naturally responding chemically to the neurons in our brain, and we can't help it. That would make us no different from a robot. And if that's the case, why should we be held accountable for anything that we do? Because we can't help it. If that's the case, I should come into your house, rape your wife, rape your daughters, kill you, kill your family, take all of your possessions, and I should not be held accountable for that because I am only doing what I am chemically wired to do. If I light a stick of dynamite and it goes off, you're not mad at the dynamite because it just chemically did what it was designed to do. If we are just wet robots, then we should not be held accountable for anything we do because we're just chemically reacting to how nature has designed us to act. We're not making any real choices. Now, does that sound like the world we observe today? No, it's not. Therefore, our choices are authentic. The fact that those of you who are disagreeing with me right now, you're using your logic and your reason to disagree with me right now. If you're just a robot, then why should you even trust what you think? It doesn't follow. You're not a robot. You have authentic choices. You have authentic feelings. You have authentic thoughts, which means your consciousness is a reality, but it does not have molecular makeup, which means it is immaterial, which is the very definition of the spirit realm.